Hello, everybody. Sorry, I had to drink a sip of water here. So, hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends. So excited to be with you. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the recent trip of the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to China. And what are the geopolitical implications and what messages are in this trip to begin with? Okay, this is what I'm going to be covering rather in this discussion, because there are other issues that have never come up to the forefront and they are tied to the trip, and that's what I intend to address in this conversation here today. But before I'll do this, I like to extend, like always, that's my way of saying thank you. I know some people get a little bit agitated. Why doesn't he get into the topic right away? Patience is a virtue. But I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all of you for your continued support. It means a lot to me. So I would like to give a shout out to Phil Koo. Hope I pronounce it correctly. It's Khoo. Thank you so much for becoming a channel supporters. And I still hold my promise to you that once we reach 100 members or supporters, I'm going to do an exclusive Q&A just for you. And speaking of Q&A, by the way, I am going to take 2 or 3 questions in this session here today. So just prepare your questions. And towards the end, I'm going to scroll down and hopefully I'll be able to see it. So, all right. So before I'll do this, I'm going to put links for you, all that stuff like I always do. But I'll share this with you for those who might be first time. And if this is your first time here, by the way, please make sure to subscribe. I would really appreciate it. As I said, for those who might be the first time here, I have announced or mentioned before that I'm giving a copy of my free book here. So here is, oh, sorry, not this one. Here's my free book right here. That's the link to it, geopoliticsinconflict.com/Saud. I will put this in the description link so you can get the free copy electronically or upload it and you can read it. And I usually addressed China in this. As a matter of fact, I devoted a half section of a chapter just about the Saudi-Chinese relations, what's behind the scenes and all that. So, okay, now let me get into the topic here. So here is first of all, and once again, to those who just join us right now, I will be taking few questions towards the end of this session here. So let's start with the key questions. And I am sure some of you have even mentioned it in the comment section. And by the way, before I'll delve deeper, because I am remembering one of you by the screen name of DSESS 2001, you put, hey, Dave. Funny when somebody calls me Dave. I hope you or someone from this channel sees this. For whatever reason, I don't ever hear you pronounce your last name. I am sure I've missed it, but I would like to know how you say it, especially if I want to recommend this channel to a friend. It's silly to recommend them but not properly know how to say your last name. Thanks. I love the channel. So, well, thank you so much for your support. The way you pronounce my last name is Waterloo. Okay, think of it like Waterloo. You all know the word Waterloo, right? You just change mine. You just change the R for an L. So mine is pronounced Waterloo. It has like 7 vowels on it. Hawaiian names tends to have a lot of vowels in it. So anyway, so let's start with, like I always say, asking the key questions. And the first one is, was Chuck Schumer invited? That's one. Second question, what was the purpose of the visit? So third question, was the visit, and this is an interesting one because, again, one of our viewers in the community brought this up, and a good point. So, and I wanted to highlight this one here because it's key. Was Chuck Schumer visit to China on behalf of Wall Street? Because if you know the ties between the Senate and the Wall Street, or the whole Congress for that matter. So, and the last question I need to ask in this is, why Chuck Schumer, that is the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, Why did he criticize China for not standing with Israel? That just didn't make any sense, which was humiliating to begin with, because that's how I looked at it. First of all, you go to a country, and by the way, I digged the last 3 days about any confirmation from both sides, from China and from the US, whether he was invited. I didn't find any record. And please correct me if I'm wrong. If you find some official request, usually those are stated or issued by the foreign ministry, please post it for the community to know and for me also to know about it. But so far, I didn't see any. So, to me, China had to show the courtesy, of course. They're not going to kick the guy out and say, no, you can't come in, because that's not part of their culture anyway. So, and this is why someone also has missed the point of why I put the thumbnail the way I did and said what I said. It wasn't some stupid conclusion, which was very ridiculous for the person to use the term. It was for a reason. I don't do random. It was a reason why I put that. So I understand how at least to a degree, how the Chinese culture is. That was sort of not a bow, but sort of a gesture to signify respect. It was nothing for no other reason than to trigger your intellectual curiosity. That's what I put that comment there. So is Chuck bowing? So that is the reason why I'm asking those questions, is because we need to understand within this context. So, well, just as a background for those who might not know, recently the delegation from Congress, made out of 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, led by the Senate Majority Chuck Schumer, let me show you guys a picture, made the trip to, right there, made the trip to China. That was on October 7th or 7th. Yeah, from 7th to the 10th, if I'm not mistaken. So, and here is the other optics of it. Just look at there. There was no red carpet, of course, it won't be. And second, I don't know who this individual is that meeting Chuck Schumer, a Chinese official. I don't know what capacity. But as far as the higher up in the Chinese government, none of them was at the airport. Usually, or welcoming at the reception, Chuck Schumer there. Usually, that's a subtle message. China, in my opinion, based on what I saw here, China will always maintain its courtesy. That's a diplomatic protocol. Okay, here is where the mistake that the West makes most of the time. And this is why, again, I'll go back to that comment from that individual who misunderstood the thumbnail. Some of us in the West misunderstood the courtesy in this case of Chinese, interpret or misinterpreting that as a weakness. That's where the problem we have on our side. Just because the Chinese or the Asian culture as a whole don't respond aggressively or forcefully, that doesn't mean they're weak. It's been a notion that I remember when I was working in Washington, D.C., we'll have conversations about Asia and all that stuff. And as a matter of fact, I'll share a story with you. Back in the days when I was in college, we're talking about early 90s, way back. I remember in my undergrad. And it was this, I was walking to go to, I think it was a history class or something like, I couldn't remember exactly. And all I saw was a foreign student. And that foreign student was Japanese, of Japanese descent. And the officer was talking to the students, but the students was standing straight, but looking down, And the American officer misinterpreted that it was disrespect, because for us in our culture, eye to eye contact, that just as long as you don't get into my space. And he misunderstood that, and it's like, sir, if may I say something quickly here, not to intervene, whatever. It just, she's not disrespecting you. It's just part of their culture. They tend to respect authority. That's all. Oh, I didn't know that. Now I see that's all it was. It's the same context here. So The idea that some of us will think so, the possibility that could be Chuck Schumer showing also respect to the Chinese culture, which that's another conversation for another day. So, but here's the thing. Why the trip happened to begin with, whether he was invited or not. The trip comes aimed at sharp deterioration in the bilateral relations between China and the US. And we know why. We know why. We fomenting tensions in South China Sea. We pushing Philippines, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and soon, hopefully not, New Zealand and Papua New Guinea. And soon, and I hope the new president of Maldives stands his ground. So we pushing this narrative to, let alone we use in India, of course, in all this, to circle China. And we think that, well, how much can they sort of be okay with whatever we're doing? At some point, they're going to push back. And this is exactly what President Xi did in this trip, especially when Chuck Schumer started to issue the criticism about China not standing with Israel. And I'll get into that as I move forward. So there is another aspect to what the trip was, and the reason being, to a degree, I'm not certain about this one because to me it's just nothing but a formality. Because Biden will want to see a photo op with President Xi on a global stage. Why? For our upcoming presidential elections, because they're going to say, see, we reached out to China, we reached a deal, and so forth. Then, as soon as elections are over, we'll go back to our fomenting tensions as we always do. And this is one of the reasons they said part of the trip is that to lay the groundwork for a possible meeting between President Biden and President Xi. So I'm surprised, and I'll admit it. I don't know who was advising President Xi. Why will he grant an audience to Chuck Schumer? And this is a question for you guys. Do you think was the right of President Xi to grant an audience to Chuck Schumer instead of letting Chuck Schumer meet with his counterpart, or he already met with the foreign minister Wang Yi, and that ends right there. This is a president, this is a foreign minister. Do you think was it right of President Xi to grant Chuck Schumer the audience? Make sure to leave me the comment on this or answer in chat in the chat box, and I'll check it out as I move forward here. So this is one of the reasons that this saying the trip was about, but it wasn't about that. You and I know we're smart enough to understand the ins and outs. By now, we've been conversing together for over a few months now, or even a year and a half or so. By now, and I do know that you see the big picture. This trip wasn't about laying the ground for Biden. Who gives a damn about whether Biden's going to meet with Xi or not? Whether even President Xi will be interested in meeting with Biden. Why would I care? You meet with them, shake hands, say, hey, we want to work out our differences. You turn around and stab them in the back. Doesn't make sense. What makes us think that the Chinese will be okay with that? Despite their culture, they will welcome guests and be respectful and show the diplomatic protocol and so forth. But at some point, you say enough is enough. And this is why I see the humiliation of Chuck Schumer going there. And that's why I put on the live stream thumbnail, on the other one, not the one I share with you guys for the community, I put the word help, please. That takes me back to the fundamental question. Was the trip on behalf of Wall Street? Because you have to think about it that way. So now, there are two reasons. I'm putting my geopolitical analyst hat, and I'm going to talk to you about those two. One of them has to do with microchips. Okay? Second issue, you know what it is? It has to do with our concern that Germany is getting closer to China. We were trying to deindustrialize Germany. Why do you think we blew up the pipeline? Germany is seeing the potentials with China. They're seeing the technological advances. They're seeing that now Chinese do not use chips, microchips, and so forth as much as they used to from Europe or the United States for that matter. As a matter of fact, Chuck Schumer's trip was pushed by the industrial leaders in the United States, those multi corporations that deal with the microchips, pushing him because we are struggling right here in the US. Of course, the media is not going to disclose that. That was basically what was at the heart of the trip. We wanted to hit two birds with one stone. One bird, one stone, two birds. One bird is to ensure that China will lift its sanctions on the microchip stuff that now most American companies are finding out. And second, to ensure we wanted to test the waters to see whether China has intentions to move forward in its relationship with Germany. Because that was the whole big picture of why we end up creating what we created in Europe with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. It's basically we wanted to deindustrialize Germany. It's the same pattern, except in a different setting we did to Japan back in the 80s. That's what was the reason at the trip, in my opinion. So of course, you're gonna have Western media saying, "Oh, the trip, President Xi and the Senate Majority Schumer meeting will raise hopes for a smoother U.S.-China relations." How could you say that or write that when deep down we know it's not the truth? It's not the truth because we're saying one thing but doing the opposite. I looked at it in a perspective when the delegation arrived there. Of course, the meeting with here's the picture with the Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and I can tell Mr. Wang Yi was not comfortable being there because usually they don't smile if they don't mean it. That's the way I see it. I can see how fake the smile of Mr. Schumer, and I don't hold it back. Wang Yi was in a position that, because he knows. And again, we're not judging. We're just sort of providing some sort of an analysis into all this. That is the whole idea of it. So to think in terms of this smoothing relationship, well, here is what President Xi said, and I quote, "There were 1,000 reasons to make the relationship work." End of quote. Yeah, but for the American side, it's not going to see it that way. It's because I think Chuck Schumer, when he went there, still under that notion, oh, we're just talking to China. In other words, not on an equal footing, which means we don't recognize China's ascendancy on the global power stage. That's the mentality, which is, of course, you and I know that is wrong. The world has changed and we need to change with it. And right after this, Senate Majority Chuck Schumer criticized Beijing for its response by not supporting Israel. What the heck? You are going to talk about trade. You are going to talk about fixing the relationship between the two countries, China and the United States. Why all of a sudden you bring in Israel into the mix of all this? Of course, for those of you who might not know, Chuck Schumer is a Jewish by birth. So he was born in New York, of course, in Brooklyn and all that, but he's of Jewish descent. So there are about 37 members in Congress that are Jewish, of Jewish ethnicity. And I will provide you the link for all that stuff. And this is why when you're here, I read an article by David Pearson and Vivian Wang from, I think, New York Times, which sometimes you know how New York Times is kind of wishy-washy. So I read the first paragraph and I kind of like, enough of this, because I could tell the narrative where it's going. Average Joe, average Jane, who does not have this kind of understanding will fall for that. This is why New York Times, well, who's going to believe in New York Times? Yeah. So he said, and I quote, what they wrote, both authors, David Pearson and Vivian Wang, this is a quote from them, Mr. Xi's amicable tone is likely to increase expectation that he will attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation gathering in San Francisco in November and meet with President Biden. Doing so would cap tumultuous year for U.S.-China relations that reached a low in February after the discovery of a Chinese surveillance balloon over the United States, which we all know it was a hoax. It was nothing there. The equipment that was inside that was American equipment. It's pathetic. So, and that's why, I have a respect for those authors, Remember, FYI, guys, authors of newspapers, they are writing what they are being told to write. FYI, there is no independence. Either they write that or leave their or lose their job. So that's their decision. It's not mine to get involved in this. So, but here is the interesting aspect that I found very interesting is that Mr. Schumer, who you lead in a bipartisan delegation. You're supposed to think about the interest of the United States, about the trade issues. What are you concerned about Israel over there? Yeah, there is an issue in Israel. Nobody's denying this, which is a mess to begin with. But you are going for one specific objective. Why mix up stuff? Because to me, if I were looking from outside in, if I were in China as a Chinese official looking in, and I said, what's wrong with this guy? He's not even coherent in what he is here about. So what Chuck Schumer ended up saying that he is, and I put this in quote, disappointed, end of quote, at Mr. Xi's lack of sympathy for Israel in its official response. Yeah, come on. What Mr. Schumer didn't disclose is that President Xi made it clear as to where he stands on this issue back in 2001. And here is the thing. The recording for that has been deleted from Twitter or X. I looked it up. It's not there anymore. But I did find something. I digged through. Guys, I always do the research before I'll come on here, and I will provide you the link. I did found a statement, and an entire statement by President Xi that goes back to 2011. And here is what President Xi said, and I quote, "The Palestinian issue bears on peace and stability in the Middle East. The historical injustices done to the Palestinian people should not be left unattended indefinitely. The legitimate rights and interests of a nation are not up for trade, and the demand to establish an independent state shall not be denied." And it's a long quote. I'm going to put the link for you guys. I don't want to bore you reading too much here. But again, that's just leads us to ask the question, well, if you are going to China to talk about the issues we have with China, why are you injecting another topic that is beyond the realm of your visit? That's why I don't quite get it. And right there, it gives you an idea. Maybe the whole visit wasn't about just talking about trade, but aimed at something else completely. Well, that something else had to do with Germany, as I mentioned earlier. This is my own analysis, my own opinion. Because I didn't see anybody covering this. When I say anybody, the media, they won't talk about this at all. But Germany is looking to China. As a matter of fact, it was a conversation about having China fix the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that we blew up. Because the Chinese see the technology of the Germans, see how advanced China is technologically. And this is why business leaders in the US, as a matter of fact, they had a talk with the White House about this issue of tariffs and the sanctions on the chips and all that stuff. China said, hell with it. We'll do our own. And as a matter of fact, I did find out that now China can can produce conclusively the 7 millimeters. and they're moving into the 5 millimeters chips, the small ones. China can do that now on its own. They even developed lithography, the machines that's used for this. So ASML, the Dutch company that sells that, now is worried. South Korea is worried. And this is where you see this kind of confusion. You are going to talk about something and addressing something else? What the heck? That just didn't make any sense whatsoever. So, and this is why the idea of thinking in terms of, it shouldn't be. If you are going to meet with the Chinese delegations or officials over there, you have a specific issue in mind. That's the reason why you go in there to begin with. It's not a tourism trip or whatever. You go in for business on behalf of the American people, not of the Jewish state or Israel or Senate or Wall Street, which is another conversation we ought to keep in mind. Why? Because who's the second country we borrow money from, guys? Can anybody type in the answer if you happen to know? Out of all the 20, now, by the way, we crossed into $33 trillion in national debt. So who's the second country that holds our debt? And Wall Street plays a major role into all this, believe it or not. Japan is first. You're right, David Kwan. You're absolutely correct. China is the second. Japan is one. Japan is number one, holds our debt. And all that was by design, by the way. That's why we sank Japan in the 80s financially, because we didn't want them to grow even stronger economically. This is the same pattern we're seeing going on with Germany. As a matter of fact, the head of the parliament in Germany now saying, we can, I hope I find it here. This we can trust the Americans. And I had it. I usually try to keep those. There are so many of them, and if not, I will post it at some point if I get to it. It just there are too many, and I'm trying to keep track of everything here, but sometimes it's too much. But anyway, that person said, well, it's the idea of that we can't trust the Americans anymore. Well, some Europeans are waking up to the reality that maybe that was by design. Yeah, right here, I found it. Let me share it with you guys so you can see with your own eyes, because I always like to provide the evidence for what I'm sharing with you here so you see it. I hope the screen doesn't freeze this time around. You all remember last time, right? Yeah, which was unusual. Anyway, what it says there, I know you guys can see it. President of the Bundestag Foreign Policy Committee said, and I quote, "We can no longer trust America." That is what it says. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to share the link with you so you guys can see it on the screen right here. And the banner. Let me stop sharing this screen here. Show right there. Yeah, this is the one, but I'll post it for you guys so you can see it with your own eyes. So that's the whole idea of why I'm saying, well, the German angle to it was, we didn't say it directly, but we wanted to test the water, as we said, the expression we have here, test the waters vis-a-vis how China sees that, because Germany is expressing interest, especially now when you think about, for example, in the automobile industry, EVs. Europeans are looking to China. Even now, there is a country in Latin America just got a delivery, I think, or an agreement. Don't quote me on this, about 500 electric buses from China. So to me, that was the whole idea. What I found very troubling, even inside China in Beijing, it was from the Israeli ambassador or senior official. I'm sorry, senior official at the Israeli embassy. His name is Yuval Wax. He said, and I quote, he expected, and I put this in quote, stronger condemnation of Hamas from China. I don't think so. He didn't understand that China is neutral. That's why China succeeded in brokering a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So what make him think that China's going to just give that up and say, sure, we will side with whatever, which is not the policy of China. That's the whole idea. And the reason being because China understands the complexities of the Middle East. And even with that, took a chance on dealing with the Saudis and Iran. And by the way, those negotiations they were for years. Didn't take a month, 2 months, or 3. 40 years China was working on it behind the scenes. So, and it was very concerning. Even some other analysts, and I got somebody by the name Tuvia Guerin, an expert on China foreign policy at the Diane and Guilford Glazer Center at the Institute of National Security Studies in Israel, which he posted on Twitter saying, and I quote here, China's moral compass was broken, end of quote. Nonsense. Nonsense, because it's the same thing we've been pushing China to condemn Russia. They said, no, we are neutral. We don't get involved in that. And that's what I always said about the problem in the West. They don't understand how, in this case, China's culture is part, because that culture is part of how it's reflected in its foreign policy. Its history is reflected in its foreign policy. And we never seems to understand this. We never get it. Makes you wonder. Even in Bloomberg channel, they mentioned the same thing. I urge you and the Chinese people to stand with Israel people and condemn the cowardly and vicious attacks upon them. This is what Schumer said. He was quoted. It just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense, And this is why I think the idea of how the foreign minister of China, Mr. Wang Yi, sort of approached this, dealing with this bipartisan delegation of US, saying that he's hoping that their visit, listen carefully, guys, he's hoping that their visit will get relations back on track. He didn't say, or he didn't talk about any other issue, because that was what's supposed to be the purpose of the trip. You stick to the issue. So, and again, this is where for Schumer to say, well, I'm expressing disappointments with China's response, it's nonsense. It is nonsense. That means you, meaning Schumer in this case, ignoring where China stands on international conflicts like the Arab-Israeli conflict. They don't favor one side over another. They have argued, however, China, like other countries, have argued for recognition of Palestine at the United Nations. They did raise this. So did other countries. So then there is a third problem that Schumer brought up all of a sudden. And this has to do with fentanyl crisis in America, blaming it on China. Well, hold on a second, man. Hold on a second. I've been aware from the 80s of our war on drugs in Latin America. We never succeeded. As a matter of fact, we did not want to win that war. We wanted to let it go for economic reasons. Just think about who introduced drugs into Southern California in the 70s. So for him, Chuck Schumer, to address now what the fentanyl issue is, the Chinese problem, whatever, to me, that's weakness. Why weakness? When you shift the blame, that's like us, ordinary people. If you make a decision, okay, and the outcome turns out to be bad, are you going to be blaming others, or are you going to blame yourself? In either direction, the outcome is good or outcome is bad. Same thing. The drug issues or this whatever, it's here at home. How about fixing our own first before we blame others? Even though China mentioned that they will stop sort of the supply of certain chemicals pertaining to, because there's still certain entities in the United States manufacturing fentanyl. And even hypothetically, to go with the argument that it is the case, wouldn't it be your responsibility here in the United States to control that market? The same thing you're supposed to do with drugs that's been flown in to America from way back, from the 60s. The war. If American people only realized the billions of dollars that's been spent on a war on drugs, which was never intended to be won to begin with, because we're allowing the drugs to come in. So that's another issue. I didn't quite understand the rationale for it, for Mr. Schumer to just all of a sudden bring that up to the conversation. You are sitting with the delegation to talk about trade issues, about how to figure out this issue of sanctions that we imposed on China, and China reciprocated. Well, when China reciprocated, it was felt throughout the industrial sectors here in the US. No. This is, by the way, the speech that President Xi gave in 2011 about that, what I quoted for you. So that's when it was. And this is where I don't quite understand why this all hypes about the idea of, is blame it. No. No, you don't blame on anybody but yourself, because we have to start to think that we cannot compete, and we better figure out a way how to prepare the next generation of engineers, mathematicians, scientists, and so forth, instead of having this nonsense disclosures in education system that is ruining and dumbing down the students. It's the reality. Nobody wants to hear the truth anymore. That's why I left Texas A&M. I don't teach there anymore. Forget about it. I wasn't willing to play that game. You dictating to me how to teach my students? Forget about it. I don't want it. Sadly, because I feel sad for the students. And as I told you, I shared this with you before, guys. I had people, students, football players, tearing up because I mentioned to them, this is my last semester here and I'm leaving permanently. They just couldn't believe it. Why? It's because the institutions wants me to teach certain ways by standing there just reading. Don't challenge their intellectual capabilities. Yeah, this is no different than what we have here in this YouTube stuff. Yeah. Can I sit down here and talk about silly stuff? Yeah, probably, but even though I don't have the personality for that kind of stuff. But to me, it will be a waste of your time and my time. So if there is something of importance and of value that you can learn from it, that's what it will be. And I understand how the market is. This kind of conversations we have here is too heavy for some. That's the way it is. And I am not going to compromise on that. I won't. Views or not, or number of subscribers or whatever, even though I know there are some stuff going on behind the scenes that some of the viewers in our channel here in the community have been told me that they've been unsubscribed when they didn't do it. It's sad, but it is what it is. So, and I don't focus too much on that kind of stuff. I got to focus on what's important. And what is important is to help you become well-informed, to understand the development of where issues are. That's like, for example, right now with this new president of Maldives. If you only understand the big picture of the Indo-Pacific and how Now it's going to change the dynamics that now this guy, Mohammed Mouzu, made it clear that he told India, get out, and he's pivoting to China. He is thinking in terms of the welfare of his people, economically speaking. That's where the problem is. Oh, Boone, thank you so much for your support sticker. Your vote, sadly, I feel more conflicts will break out. I agree, Boone, and I am very concerned as one who wrote extensively about the Middle East, because the Middle East, no matter what, will always remain the center of gravity. And now we're seeing where. This is why we wanted to push China into that direction by condemning this or supporting it. China saying, no, we're not going to do it. Because that's China's approach to international affairs. They never side with one or another. Do you blame them for that? No, absolutely not. Thank you so much for your super sticker. I have also KL. Here's KL. Thank you so much, Gail, for your super sticker. Truly appreciate it. It means a lot to you, for me, guys. I mean it. It means a lot. Thank you so much. Osiris, I want to say thank you as well. Osiris has been a great supporter. Thank you so much, Osiris. Truly appreciate it. So, and this is when I see the challenge, guys, because we are to think in terms of, for me, at least my time with you is I want you to become informed. That is what I care the most about. Do I have to always see what you want to hear? You will never, ever hear that from me because I'm not that type. And I know I see comments, I read, some nasty stuff on, hey, I respect your opinion. You disagree with me? Fine. And you are entitled to that as long as you are being respectful. Now, if you get into being disrespectful, we're going to have a different conversation, and I don't hold back. But again, because my objective in all this is to ensure that the information you are getting, first of all, is accurate, second, is up to date, and third, that will serve you. That will serve your intellectual curiosity. That will broaden your intellectual horizon to start to see. Some of you lives in Europe, some of you lives in Asia, some in Africa, and so forth. Geopolitics is not about just one particular region. And that is the whole idea of it. That is the whole idea. Speaking of this, like the new president Maldives, I intend to do a live stream on it because you guys need to understand what's coming as far as the Indo-Pacific, because that bears the question as to, okay, where are we looking at for the next conflicts? Well, the Middle East will always be. You're already noticing now changes in the global economy regarding tensions in the Middle East. Gold is up, oil is up, stock market in Tel Aviv went down, sinking. Qatar threatened now to block or stop delivering liquefied natural gas to Western Europe. Sometimes you're going to have to make tough choices to put an end, because we have not been an honest broker into this. No. Our government is very straightforward. Let's not sugarcoat it. It's controlled by the Jewish lobby. That's nothing new. Nothing. It's not a secret. It's not. It's the norm here. So any member of Congress will fear the Jewish lobby, because the members of Congress, they don't think about serving the interest of the people that vote them in. They think about their political career. They want to stay in Congress. Schumer himself, when he was elected back in 2004, what the heck you staying all this time for? You're crossing 80. Why don't you go and enjoy the rest of your life in peace? You made millions by whatever means. All of them. I'm not picking just on Chuck Schumer. So this is where I see that big challenge. But not only challenge, but I need you to understand what was the real purpose of the trip. And again, the idea of on behalf of Wall Street, that is a valid argument. Valid argument. The way to understand this is when you see the heads of major banks like JP Morgan or Chase, Jamie Dimon last time saying, well, we're going to have to figure out how to work out the deal with China and all that. Why? Because we borrow money from China. Even Diamond himself got involved in some corruption in Malaysia way back. What happened? Nothing. So, and this is where you guys need to understand this, And I think now, because we paved the way for that, the industrialization of Germany, we sort of cut through, and now we wanted to forge it even deeper. But when we found out that Germany is Korean or getting closer to China or talking to China, all of a sudden we are worried. Or remember that motto: keep the Russians out, keep the US in, the Russians out, and Germans down. This is why the head of the Foreign Relations Council said we can't trust Americans. So that is where the big picture is. So, and that is what I wanted to share with you guys today. It's I felt it's very important for you to know. It's very, very important. So, all right, let me see if you guys have any. I'm gonna have to. Hey guys, please refrain from using some vulgar language here. I will truly appreciate it. So I'm gonna have to delete the comment. Yeah, will not tolerate that sense. You might be angry, you might be whatever, you are entitled to all that, but please maintain some civility. So, yeah, you're allowed to curse, but come on. You need to learn where to draw the line. All right, let me guys see if you have any questions here, and I'm gonna sign off after this because I'm working on one for you guys for the decision of Iraq to stop the circulation of the dollar. Which one do you guys want first, the Iraq or the Maldives? Yeah, just leave me the comment there and I'll read it later on, and we'll just go from there. So, all right, let me see. I'm going to the top and going down to see if there's any question there, and I'll answer it for you guys. Oh, I see. Question from Dagi5. Yeah, question: will you do a video about the detailed history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, starting from the expulsion of the Jews from Jerusalem by the Romans? Yeah, I could, except that will be a very, very dry. A lot of people might not have the patience to sit and listen to this, but I'll be happy to do it. So it's a very complicated, and you're absolutely correct mentioning the Romans, because it goes way back. A lot of people do not understand. They think, oh, just after World War II, decision was made. No, it was way, way, way back. So, and so I'll give it some serious thought because there's a lot to cover, and even some may think, well, it will be enough time to cover all that history. It's I never did it in my books. When I write my books, I can only go back a century. I do mention about, like what I'm doing with the Chinese book right now. I had to talk about the Qin dynasty. I had to talk about others briefly, because it will be no context if I don't mention what those dynasties did to move the Chinese society forward. So, but I didn't go into full detail because that will require more time, and it will take away from what I'm trying to get into. So, all right, I'm looking. Oh, Atin Wu, happy to see you too, man. Let me see if there is question. Oh, I want to say thank you to Sogande. Thank you so much for your super sticker. Truly appreciate it. It's the first time I see you here, so I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Uh, okay. Oh, I see. Question from Boone here. Okay, question. How worried is the U.S. Navy in losing their aircraft carrier when they get sent near to Israel? Well, the Gerald Ford is a big aircraft carrier, and when I say usually we only say aircraft carrier, but usually is the aircraft carrier group, that has more other vessels and all that stuff. So, uh, no, nothing's gonna be lost. Nothing's gonna be. What it's gonna be is that it's gonna raise the high will heighten tensions now in the Middle East far beyond what you can even imagine, because Iran is already preparing. Iran is already setting everything in motion. The groups that are in contact with Iran are already positioning themselves, be it in southern Lebanon or be it in on the border in the Gaza Strip. So, or in Syria for that matter. So this is why Israel went ahead and attacked certain aspects in Syria, trying to draw in Iran. But it won't be pretty if Israel attacks Iran. Iran's going to launch a barrage of missiles and literally Iron Dome's not going to cut it. Iron Dome won't cut it. It's because those missiles will not only be coming from Iran, they will be coming from other locations within the Middle East. Iran is very wired in the Middle East. As one who works in Washington, very familiar with even through my own research for the book and all that stuff, they are very wired both militarily and from an intelligence perspective. But the U.S. Navy will be concerned, but mainly not for the assets. It will be more concerned, and not just the Navy, but the whole military apparatus about U.S. installations in the Middle East, because most of them are within reach of the missiles from Iran. And trust me, they won't hesitate to use them if they are attacked. So for now, it's going to be, of course, what's going to happen to our Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. It could be targeted also, but mind you that in the Strait of Hormuz and the water, there are already landmines over there. So Iran already put all that cross. So that's in preparation. That's been the norm to do that. Okay. And that's about it. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you find this very informative. And I look forward to seeing you next time. As always, remember, geopolitics impact your daily life in more ways than one. Till next time. Bye bye.